Good morning, everyone. I'm very honored to welcome Trevor Hughes to our event, From Chaos to Digital Governance. Trevor is the president and the CEO of the IAPP. Trevor, thank you very much for joining us for this invaluable and for your invaluable contributions to the field of privacy, AI, and digital governance.
Thanks, Dan. Good morning. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, as a longtime active member and a contributor to the IAPP, I'm very thrilled to be part of this conversation today. As we celebrate the 25th anniversary of the IAPP, I would like first to express my appreciation for the organization's support and dedications to us, the practitioners worldwide. The IAPP has been a beacon of guidance and a prominent force in our industry for so many years now, helping countless professionals navigate the complexities of data protection, privacy, cybersecurity, AI, and other digital services-related regulations. Over the past year, the IAPP has undergone a significant transformation, expanding its focus from being a home for privacy professionals to encompass AI and digital governance practitioners as well. This shift, I think, reflects the evolving landscape of regulatory compliance and the need for organizations to adopt a more holistic approach to governance. In late 2024, the IAPP published a groundbreaking report highlighting the necessity for, I may say, a paradigm shift in how organizations manage compliance with multiple regulations, and we are facing a barrage of regulations worldwide. Thank you, Trevor, again for taking the time to address the Israeli audience in this event. We also face here in Israel some major shifts with the large reform to the protection of privacy law, with demanding cybersecurity regulations, and with the emergence of new guidelines and directives, and of course the evolving global regulatory landscape, especially in the US and Europe, are extremely important for Israeli companies. So let's dive into our discussion. I would maybe ask you first by maybe setting the stage. So this is essentially a sort of a wake-up call, isn't it? Can you describe how the IAPP views the current siloed way organizations treat compliance and governance today, as the report described as the analog governance structure versus the proposed new governance approach?
Sure. So thanks, Dan. And absolutely, we face a complex moment globally. We see the rise of technological innovation. We see the rise of data and data complexity. And we see not only a fragmenting, but a multiplying regulatory environment where jurisdictions around the world are adding more and more standards. Add to that, many of the traditional domains that have covered various aspects of legal risk, of compliance risk, even of digital policy risk, are increasingly finding that their domains overlap. And let me give you an example of that, and let me explain what we found. So 2.5 years ago, the IAPP launched the AI Governance Center here at the IAPP. It is our most successful program ever. We now have over 12,000 people who have taken our training on AI governance, which is phenomenal. And as we were out on the road telling that story, we heard a very constant, a very consistent story back. And that was inside organizations, the various issues of digital policy were being covered in silos. They were being addressed in their own narrow channel inside organizations. So yes, you would have a cybersecurity team, but the cybersecurity team didn't necessarily speak the same language as the privacy team, which didn't necessarily speak the same language as the data governance team or the trust and safety team or the content moderation team or other teams. And so you have this lack of integration and coordination inside many organizations where these various digital policy issues are being handled, but being handled in a vacuum, in a silo, without regard for the intersections that are increasingly arising because of the complexity of technology, but also because of the complexity of the regulatory environment that we face. And so what we documented in our organizational digital governance report, after we had been out on the road and seen this enough times, is that these silos are actually a challenge inside organizations. They're presenting a problem for organizations. And I want you to put yourself in a board seat. If you're on a board of directors, if you're a CEO, how do you know what risk is falling between these silos? How do you know that you've covered all of the risks in your organization? How do you know that you've addressed the opportunities appropriately if these various silos do not integrate and work well together? And what we found is that they don't. I'll give you a really clear example on this. Intellectual property in most organizations is a fairly small, fairly unique function that exists in a tiny team in the legal department if you have anyone that does it. Often it's an outside counsel who helps with intellectual property issues, but it's normally a very small team. Well, in this AI moment that we are facing, all of a sudden intellectual property intersects with your privacy team. It intersects with your cybersecurity team, with your product teams, can intersect with your trust and safety and content teams. All of a sudden, your intellectual property lawyers need to know when to pull in the privacy team or the cyber team or the trust and safety team, and vice versa. And so that intersection, that overlapping of issues is creating an imperative, a moment that we have to respond to, which is that we need to develop better frameworks for digital responsibility, for digital governance across the organization so that these issues are dealt with more comprehensively.
Yeah, so we're essentially talking about operational efficiency, financial efficiency, better risk management. Do you see already any impact of the report on companies? Does the IPP has already get some feedbacks from companies on are they starting to embrace the concept of a new structural framework for compliance?
So the answer is yes, but the answer is also it's complicated. And so let me give you the yes answer first. We have begun to see many organizations start with an intermediate step, which is to develop a committee, a council, a structure inside the organization where intellectual property and competition and cyber and trust and safety and product and privacy, they all have a seat at the table. And it will vary by organization. Different organizations will have different functions that are sitting at the table. But it is a mechanism to at least make aware across the organization the number of digital policy issues that are emerging, where they overlap and intersect, and give at least a rudimentary management structure for organizations to begin to deal with this. It also creates a mechanism through which reporting to the board and the C-suite can occur, so that upper level executives and the board of directors are also very aware of what's happening inside the organization. We are most definitely seeing those types of functions emerge in many organizations, and many privacy lawyers, chief privacy officers sit on, if not chair, those committees, those councils that bring together the various digital policy issues within the enterprise. So we're seeing that, and that migration is without question happening. But here's the complexity. These things don't happen in a bubble. They don't happen inside an organization, and that's the only thing that matters. The outside world matters as well. And we are in a moment of political complexity around the world, and I think there are even more pressing concerns at times around data sovereignty and digital sovereignty, around data transfers, around what will happen with AI governance and AI regulation country by country. Clearly, the EU AI Act has passed. Clearly, there are markets around the world that are considering AI legislation, but clearly, there is a movement afoot. There is a work that is happening to try and hold back on additional regulation in the short term and focus on growth, adoption, and speed to market. We'll see how those things play out. But we definitely are seeing a maturity, even though it's still rather immature, but a movement towards greater maturity in the structures.
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. Well, maybe taking on the maturity aspect of it, I see at least one challenge in the sort of restructure of governance activities within organizations, and that is that some of the regulations that we're talking about are pretty mature, like data privacy. You mentioned intellectual property, maybe cybersecurity regulations as well. But on the other
Right.
hand, there are also, very new early stage regulations such as AI and many of the new EU regulations around data and digital services. How do you merge the sort of a well-established incumbent type of regulations and the functions within the organizations that manage them, then manage the compliance with them, with the newborns, with the newborn regulations?
Sure. So, of course, you're asking an impossible question. So thanks for that, Dan. But also, um, look, it's challenging. It is absolutely challenging. We did some work on the EU AI Act and found there are something like 40 different legislative references within the EU AI Act. So you have to read the hundreds of pages associated with the AI Act itself, but then go out to many thousands of pages of other regulations and legislation in order to fully understand how the AI Act may apply to your operations, your organization. It is a complex matrix of digital policy standards that is emerging all around the world. And we do focus on Europe from time to time, and I think it's big and notable, and Brussels is famous for the Brussels effect, which is the production and export of regulation. But we shouldn't for 1 second think that it's just the EU that's doing this. There are many laws around the world. So what do you do about it? I think there's a few things. I think the maturity model that we created or documented, we didn't even create it, we just found it out there in the marketplace. I think the maturity model helps. Creating a committee where cross function dialogue can occur, that's really important. Upskilling professionals inside your organization. So if you're on the privacy team, you better start learning some AI stuff. If you're on the cyber team, you probably should start learning some privacy stuff. If you're on the trust and safety team, you may want to start to think about intellectual property. Not that you're going to become an expert in those domains, because let's also be clear, I don't think this unicorn of a perfect digital responsibility professional exists. You can't know all of these domains at a level of mastery that would be necessary. Rather, what you need is conversational fluency with the experts in those domains so that you can convey what's important from your domain and understand what they're saying about theirs. If those types of people who are upskilled in cross-domain conversational capabilities are sitting in a committee structure, a structure that allows digital responsibility to be understood and addressed, I think you're going to find that you will find the overlaps, you will find the commonalities. And here's the other really important thing. You'll know how much one unit of risk on the cyber team, how much that equals or what that compares to a unit of risk on the privacy team. Because right now, those measures and metrics don't exist. There's not a way to know, should we put $1 million onto the cyber risk management function or $1 million onto the privacy data protection risk management function or the AI governance function? That's a really hard choice for resource allocation or just risk management response right now. Having the dialogue inside your organization is going to help with that.
Yeah, and you mentioned that it's all those functions that you've mentioned should be aware and knowledgeable of other functions in order to sort of work together and collaborate and do their work in a more efficient way. But we're talking about organization with a hierarchy, and essentially, from my experience, if there is no one one function to rule them all, that will be an
Sure.
issue. So that's definitely a question. Who is going to run the show? Who will be the owner of the whole thing?
Yeah.
We know from even from IAPP surveys that you've conducted, that DPOs, a lot of them are taking on AI, responsible
Yeah.
AI, and ethics responsibilities, and but on the other hand, they're pretty much kept away from, for example, cybersecurity management. So, who's going to be the owner? Who will set the tone
Yeah.
in these process?
Yeah. So again, an impossible question. So thanks again, Dan. But I think we have some indicators, and you're right. Um, in our research, we have documented that in 50% of organizations, the file labeled AI compliance, AI risk, or AI governance, that's being handed to the privacy leader of the organization. So over 50% of organizations. We further documented that of our almost 90,000 members around the world, 82% of them have had something other than privacy added to their job in the past year. So clearly, as executives look across the organization, they are seeing the privacy team, they're seeing privacy leadership, and they're saying, they're good with technological innovation, really challenging regulatory environments, and then implementing risk management and compliance tools inside the organization in a very broad way. And they've been doing it for 25 plus years. So there is a logic to looking to the privacy team for much of this, but that's not the only place it can live. Whether this reports up through a general counsel, a chief risk officer, the CEO, I think there is still a need for that cross-organizational conversation to occur. At some point, the CISO has to be able to have a conversation with the CPO. At some point, the head of AI governance has to be able to have a conversation with the lawyer in the legal team who works on intellectual property issues. These things have to happen in our existing digital world. Every organization is going to be somewhat unique in the way they address it, but clearly we need better structures to manage it all.
Yeah, and I think that the Israeli protection of privacy law has gotten a major reform which will take effect this August, and one of the major additions to the law is the mandatory appointment of a privacy officer under certain circumstances, and I think that Israeli law has gone one step further from the GDPR in this term. By requiring that the privacy officer would not only be knowledgeable in privacy laws, but that they will have some form of understanding and knowledge in information security and cybersecurity as well. And this is maybe a sort of a forward-looking understanding that a privacy officer will need to take a sort of an interdisciplinary and cross-functional job and take over much more than just privacy functions and practices within the organization. So as the IPP sees it now, does it have this type of restructuring has specific challenges around budget, around management decisions, around ego, maybe around lack of common language? What are the key challenges for this type of a shift?
Yeah, so a really good question. I think all of the things that you raised are absolutely issues. And we should note that we're in a moment where markets around the world are going up and down, off and down. There are concerns about the trajectory that we are on in many markets around the world, and that creates a lack of spending, a tightening of professional development and other budgets. That creates real challenges. Resources, you're never going to have enough resources. I've never heard of a CPO that said to me, my company's giving me too many resources, I have to give some back. That conversation has never, ever happened. In our surveys, year after year after year, a need for technological, human, financial resources always exists within these organizations. So what do? I think you do the things that are easier, less expensive, more available, particularly in this short-term window where we're going through a lot of turbulence in global markets around the world, and that's creating some issues in terms of investment from organizations. Upskill, upskill, upskill. What has gotten you to this place in your career will not get you and your organization to the next stage that you want to get to. So invest in yourself, have your organization invest in you, and build out those conversational capabilities, those issue spotting capabilities, the expertise across more domains. Regardless of the immediate consequence in your organization, you will be a more valuable professional if you have upskilled. You will make better choices for your organization. You'll help your organization navigate issues better. And whether they recognize it or not, someone will recognize it eventually and pay you appropriately for that. So I think the biggest and first message is this is a moment for upskilling. It is not a moment to just retire on the education and experience that you have built for so many years. It is a moment to be learning, 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 because there is so much happening so quickly. That's the first thing. I actually think that might be the number one thing that most organizations should focus on at this moment, is make sure that your people are capable of answering the questions that this market, this moment are going to ask of your organization. And there are so many of those. And that's a massive job in and of itself. Here's the good news on the investments in some of the other resources and assets. Guess what? An AI impact assessment, a fundamental human rights impact assessment, looks a lot like a privacy impact assessment. And if you can get into a little bit of the code or the template for your PIA and just swap out privacy for risk impact assessment or impact assessment and let it cover a number of things, you're probably a long way towards being done or being in a better place. You're going to add some questions. You're going to have to make it work, but it's going to be very functional. So you don't have to build an entire new PIA management platform, a DPIA management platform. You likely can leverage existing technology. Similarly, transparency requests or human in the loop decision requests, they start to look a little bit like data subject access requests. And instead of building out an entire new team or structure or function or platform, maybe think of leveraging the tools that you already have. And here's the advantage to all of that. As you build those things onto a common platform, what you find is you have analysts, technicians, managers, people who are working within that platform who are functional, not just in privacy, not just in data protection, but across AI and cyber and other issues that your organization may face. So first message, upskill, upskill, upskill. Second message is, yeah, you're probably going to need new resources, but make sure that you are leveraging everything you've already got to the greatest extent possible. And don't think that you have to build it brand new, because having multiple teams that are doing similar work is not an efficient use of your resources.
Yeah, that's very enlightening. Let's maybe look forward. The IAPP has been tremendously helpful for us practitioners with a great knowledge base and information and surveys and reports and a great deal of material that could support the ongoing and day-to-day practice. How do you see the IAPP role now? From now on, in terms of promoting this new concept?
Sure. So we are celebrating our 25th anniversary this year, and we're very proud of our heritage as an organization. We were formed, and I think at our foundational level, we are a privacy organization. But it is a fact that AI governance, cybersecurity law, many other issues have emerged, which not only intersect, but overlap really significantly with privacy. And it turns out that the skills and the things that the IAPP can bring to the broad marketplace, they make sense in AI governance, cybersecurity law, digital responsibility broadly. So we're going to do the things that we have done in privacy for these emerging domains. Many of the attendees at your event, many of our members will know that we've launched 2 AI conferences, one in Europe, one in the United States. AI Governance Global will happen in Dublin in May. AI Governance Global US will happen in Boston in September. We have a managing director for that section. We have created a cybersecurity law center at the IAPP led by Jim Dempsey, Professor Jim Dempsey. We are launching workshops and content on cybersecurity law. I think as these domains emerge, you can expect that the IAPP will be building out content, resources, conferences, certifications, the types of things that our members will need. We see it as our job. We think it is our mission to support the people doing the work. So if the work is happening out there and it's an area where we think we can bring strength and skill and depth, and that is really anywhere where these overlapping issues of data, technology, and human interest kind of intersect and mix together. We think the IAPP has a role at that intersection. We're never going to be an intellectual property legal association, but where intellectual property intersects with all of our domains, we'll be there. We will be there for cybersecurity legal professionals. We will be there for privacy and AI governance professionals. We will do the things that people love the IAPP for.
Thanks, Trevor. Time is running out, so final question. The Israeli industry, especially the tech industry, is predominantly aimed at the US and the EU and UK markets. What would you recommend Israeli companies as the next step? What should they be most aware of?
I think it is without question that we are in a turbulent moment politically around the world. In Europe, there are great concerns about the relationship with the United States. There are concerns about data transfers. That will be a very hot issue in very short order. There are concerns that perhaps Europe overextended on its digital strategy. And the Draghi report from last fall and comments from President von der Leyen this year suggest that there may be a new set of eyes looking at the EU regulatory structure to try and support more of a native industry around technology, around AI particularly. That's Europe. In the United States, I think that it is hard to predict that there will be significant activity at a federal level in the United States in the coming year. I think what we will see is more of the types of statements that we've seen from the Trump administration in the past couple of months. So JD Vance notably was in Paris at the AI Action Summit and talked about how the US was going to prioritize growth and adoption and acceleration into AI as opposed to regulation. And so I'm not predicting, and I think it's hard to predict privacy or AI legislation coming out of the federal government in the United States. However, the US is not just the federal government. In fact, it is the United States. And there are many states, 50 of them, 19 of which have passed standalone comprehensive privacy legislation, one of which has passed comprehensive AI legislation. And I think both of those numbers will increase in 2025 and 2026. So we may see 4 or 5 privacy laws passed this year. We have seen 300 AI bills introduced at the state level across the United States so far. So expect lots of activity, not necessarily from the federal government, but from the US states. What does that all add up to for Israeli businesses, for any business around the world? More complexity. I think it means that there will be more complexity. And so I'm sorry, but I can't predict less work. I think we will all have more work. I think it will be more complex, and it raises the importance of those upskilled, empowered professionals doing this incredibly important work inside organizations. So we'll be here at the IAPP to support them because we know how hard their jobs are going to be.
Absolutely. Our time's up. Thank you. Thank you, Trevor, for sharing your insightful thoughts today. Thank you for addressing our Israeli audience and taking part in this conversation. As we conclude this chat, I want to express again my appreciation for the IAPP and you personally for your continued support and leadership. I want to thank you all for attending our chat. Have a great, fruitful time with the rest of the event today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan. Stop recording. Stop.
Okay.
There we go.